What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Points Per podcast. Today, we're going to be breaking down the free agency fallout from this crazy free agency period. We got trades, we got signings. We're looking at the risers and fallers and the fantasy implications of all of this action that we've had over the past couple days. And we have a lot of information to get through, so I think we should probably just get right into it. But real quickly before we do, Will, how you feeling?
Hey, man, I'm feeling better than Max Crosby right now. That whole situation, kind of wild, but otherwise, I'm feeling pretty good.
I'm glad to hear it. I'm excited to get into this one. So let's just start it right away. We're just going to go through the list of teams here. I feel like that's probably the easiest way to keep things organized. So the biggest name that the Buffalo Bills brought in is going to be DJ Moore. I'm curious your thoughts on the trade itself, because to me that seems pretty ridiculous, and also what this means for DJ Moore and the Bills from a fantasy standpoint.
So I think the second round pick for DJ Moore may be a little rich for my taste.
Maybe?
Maybe a little rich. But at the same time, this does fill a need for the team. They do need someone to throw the ball to out there for Josh Allen. In terms of like we had talked about it before off camera with like the compensation and just the contract itself that they're signing into. It's just not the best situation in terms of like team situations. But for fantasy, it is exciting, I will say. I'm excited fantasy wise.
I think that's fair. I think it gets even crazier when you put it into the context of what we saw Michael Pittman get traded for, like a late round pick swap, a sixth for a seventh, basically. So the fact that they had to go all in on DJ Moore, who honestly, I might rather have Pittman straight up at this point. Seems a little crazy to me, but I get that, DJ Moore does have the connection to Joe Brady. And so, that was probably his first thought when looking at the wide receiver free agency market or trade market, I guess. And I do think you bring up a good point that just strictly in terms of fantasy implications, this is probably the best landing spot that DJ Moore could have found himself in terms of, one, obviously level of team investment in him, but also just general opportunity based on that wide receiver depth chart. The thing for me is that, I think the team needed kind of a field stretching true X. And DJ Moore used to be that at one point in his career, but we haven't seen that from him recently. I think he's closer to kind of like Deebo Samuel now, and like the washed version, than he was to what he used to be earlier in his career.
Yeah, especially like last year was, I guess people would definitely call it a down year for him, but like way more down than people expected it to be, especially for just the team and how well they kind of did as a unit. It was disappointing to see him not do great, but I'm hoping the change of scenery will do some good here. And maybe there is something left in the tank that we just saw DJ Moore, who was kind of over it last year at a certain point. They brought in his direct replacement. He's playing alongside him. That might hurt a little bit, but you get him out here where he is the guy. Maybe he shows us he still has something left. That's the optimism in me on the situation.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know that I'm willing to make that bet, but it's within the range of outcomes. Yeah. I see him probably settling in somewhere in like the sixth round of best ball. And, maybe eventually when we get to redraft season, seems like a fairly reasonable price, but even there, I'm going to be hesitant to kind of buy in. Do you want to talk about Dawson Knox? We don't need to spend a bunch of time, but just kind of what that means for Dalton Kincaid, maybe?
Yeah, I think the main thing I feel, and you can say if you echo this sentiment too, it's just that I feel like they're just pushing off more and more like Dalton Kincaid's career at this point. But maybe at some point when Dawson Knox is out of the way and Dalton Kincaid is a little older, he can step into that role and maybe he's a little bit more developed. But honestly, this isn't a good sign for his development in itself or a good sign for him being the number one tight end.
I just think I think he's developed to what he's going to be. He's actually an incredibly efficient receiving tight end, but he can't block. He just can't. He's never going to be an inline guy. He can't play that position. And so they need a guy like Dawson Knox who can play that position to compete in, the kind of meta that the NFL has shifted into. You can't have a strictly receiving tight end play in line anymore. It's just not going to work. So I think we're just going to see more of the same. Like when Kincaid gets targeted, it's probably going to go well, but he's also going to be on the field 50 to 60% of the time instead of 70 to 80% of the time. So that's just what we have to deal with, I think.
Yeah, just severely limited opportunity.
Yeah. And then I guess real quickly before we move on, DJ Moore implications for the Bears pass catchers. I think everybody and their mom is going to be in on Luther Burden next year.
Yes.
Which, I want to be Luther Burden stan, but I think because of how high his price is going to get driven, it's going to be hard to ever get him at a value in any draft. But deserving of the hype for sure. Probably the wide receiver one. We'll see what happens with Rome Odunze and his recovery. He's going to be on the field for every 2 wide receiver set, which is what we really, really wanted. And so that's definitely exciting. Wheels up for Colston Loveland also. Like, it's just, I think this makes the Bears better getting rid of DJ Moore, and they got a 2nd-round pick out of it.
Yeah, it just allows them to actually focus on, who the guys are that they have and the pieces they have there, instead of trying to get guys in the rotation and get a DJ Moore going while you're trying to develop a Luther Burden. And you know what I mean? Like, it's just going to be, like you said, it's wheels up for the Bears offense, I feel like, a little bit now.
Absolutely. All right, let's keep it going because we got a lot of names to talk about here. Malik Willis, probably the biggest, or, at least one of the biggest fantasy kind of landing spots that we were waiting for the ball to drop on, goes to the Miami Dolphins, again, where he has coaching connections from Green Bay. Curious your thoughts on what this means for him personally as a fantasy asset, and also what it does for the rest of the guys on that team.
Well, first, I want to give a big congratulations to you and Vish for, your video, and you guys kind of called on this one ahead of time. But
yeah,
in terms of Malik Willis as a talent himself, last year he showed us that, more of what we saw in college, where he could be that dynamic playmaker. And over here in Miami, where you got a bunch of dynamic, well, not a bunch, but you got dynamic weapons around him, and like Devon Achane, you brought back Greg Dulcich, which we see here. You've got guys that you can get the ball to. They just got to kind of clean up the rest of the situation. Like Jalen Waddle is still there with the team. This is his last year, I'm sure, on his contract.
I can double check that for you, but I think you're right.
And then Tyreek Hill is gone. He's been released. So the wide receiver situation stands to kind of still be figured out a little bit, or at least shored up. But in terms of opportunity for Malik Willis, I think, it's sky up. You got a dual threat quarterback who's able to go out there and actually get it done from what we saw last year with the Packers.
Yeah, I think, sorry, I'm just double checking. That's not true. He just signed that extension. So he's got 2 more years left before a potential out, but technically he's signed through 2028.
Okay, well, we're good with Jalen Waddle. I think the big question mark was before they signed a quarterback, and now they have him. I think Jalen Waddle probably wheels up now.
Yeah. So I do have some concerns, not about Malik Willis specifically, although we have a very limited sample size of him starting in the NFL at this point. So it's quite possible that things could kind of turn back or revert to what we saw from him in Tennessee. I'm not necessarily betting on that. What we have seen in terms of positivity from him is he just runs like crazy. He has like over 8 rush attempts per game in his last 3 starts. And I want to say just over 60 rushing yards per game, which is crazy. That's like ridiculous levels of rushing floor. So he could be very fantasy relevant, but the real problem is that I think it sucks for the rest of the offense. I think we see the total play volume and especially the passing volume go down from what we've seen in recent years under McDaniel and Tua. I think that probably hurts Waddle the most out of anybody here, but not great for Etienne either. I think it is possible that having a running threat at quarterback might even improve Etienne's rushing efficiency. But the level of checkdowns that Etienne was getting and kind of like bolstering his PPR floor is out the window compared to what we saw from Tua, who's the check down king. So I'm a little bit nervous about both of them. I'm definitely, dropping each of them in my ranks respectively. Etienne is just so good that like it's hard to drop him that much. He goes from, a high end to middle RB1 to maybe like a back end RB1. Waddle scares me a little bit more. I think he'll have his games, and we saw Willis be accurate kind of on those downfield throws in some of those starts for Green Bay, but I just don't know how consistent it's going to be.
I'm in kind of the boat too. I think it'll be cool to see who they end up, if they end up bringing in any other wide receivers to that group, because last year, at least in terms of how the team was using with Mike McDaniel, I don't know if they're going to continue that going forward. But Devon Achane was lined up out wide sometimes too. It wasn't always checkdowns that he was getting in those opportunities.
That's very fair. Yeah.
So
I wonder how much of that is McDaniel driven versus what we're going to see from Bobby Slowick.
That's the question. I don't know if they're going to keep that up or not, but
right.
Yeah.
It's fair to bring up though. You good to move on to the Patriots?
Absolutely.
So we got Romeo Doubs, maybe not the most exciting wide receiver addition compared to what we were expecting. I think a lot of people had A.J. Brown trade rumors kind of flying in their head as it related to the Patriots. What do you think about the Doubs addition? Is he an improvement from what they have currently?
So at this point, I feel like I would probably, I don't know if I'd take a Romeo Dobbs over Stephon Diggs. They're probably pretty equal for me, or at least Romeo Dobbs gets the edge just due to age and durability at this point in their careers. But I don't know. In terms of the wide receiver group itself, Romeo Dobbs still in this situation isn't a wide receiver one to me. It's like a group of wide receiver 2s and 3s right now still.
Yeah, he's very similar to Kayshon Boutte to me. Like, I don't see much difference there. And so it's weird that they would bring in a guy so similar. I do think that he has a good shot to lead the team in targets with Stephon Diggs gone. But I don't know that that means, like a super fantasy relevant role. We'll see if they maybe add somebody in the draft that could be a little bit more exciting. But honestly, that's kind of where I'm at, where like he could lead the team in targets, but it's just not going to be amazing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
And then just we'll note some of these as we go. Elijah Vera Tucker added to the team. If he can stay healthy, which is a big if. He's had struggles staying on the field, but he's quite talented and could kind of bolster that offensive line a little bit.
Absolutely.
All right, to the Jets. Geno Smith makes his return to New York. He's back in green and white, acquired through a trade. I want to know if you think that Geno is washed after that Raiders season, or if you think that was situational, and do we think that the situation he's walking into is any better?
So I think that Raiders situation was probably one of the worst situations we've seen in the NFL in terms of just talent being there, but not being able to do anything with it. The line was putrid. Geno, obviously, he didn't really put great tape on either, but it's just a terrible situation all around. And as you saw, everybody got cleared out of there. So they kind of rebuilt from the ground up. So now with him going to the Jets, I don't know if that's him stepping into a better situation. I don't know if that's, I don't know if it's going to be an upgrade for him. He might play a little bit better, or maybe he won't. So it's tough for me, man, because there were so many reports last year of like Chip Kelly not even knowing what the plays were and shit like that. So
exactly.
I don't know how much of that really is Geno's fault. So I want to say that he as a player will play better himself because maybe there'll be a little bit more cohesion, but it's the Jets and you can never guarantee cohesion. So like
they just brought in Frank Reich as their offensive coordinator. What are we doing?
You know what I'm saying? So I have no idea.
Yeah, I want to be excited. I don't think that Geno's like turbo washed the way the public seems to think he is. I think he could have a bounce back, but he's just walking into another terrible coaching staff. Like, what's the difference between Frank Reich and Chip Kelly if they're both just going to phone it in? I don't know. The Raiders' offensive line was truly awful last year. Again, how much better is the Jets' offensive line at this point? I don't know. Like, it's younger, so maybe like the likelihood of improvement might be higher, but I don't know that I want to bet that it's going to be significantly better.
They don't have Elijah Vera Tucker anymore.
Yeah, he's gone. I mostly want to get excited for Garrett Wilson and obviously Breece Hall, who they franchise tagged. I think Garrett Wilson is incredibly talented. Breece Hall has been in this terrible situation for way too long. I'd love to see him be able to spread his wings. But I just. Yeah, we keep going back. Like Frank Reich is just not the guy that you need in 2026, right? It's not going to work.
No. So it's like you said, it's just I want him to do better, but I don't see it really happening.
Yeah, if we want to go glass half full, Geno Smith is probably better than any of the quarterbacks they had last year. I think just strictly as a quarterback, not necessarily a fantasy asset, but in terms of being able to provide fantasy points to the relevant players, it's better than Justin Fields. It's better than Tyrod Taylor. It's certainly better than whoever that white guy was. I don't even remember his name.
Nah, that's 100% fair. I don't remember it either.
And with that, let's move on to the next division. I don't really have anything relevant to say about the Ravens other than, the Crosby news, which was crazy, but that's not really a fantasy thing.
Yeah, I agree. Nothing for really the next couple teams.
Yeah, Bengals, not so much. Honestly, Browns also not so much, but I do think it's notable with all of these offensive line additions that their offensive line could be in line to improve pretty dramatically from where they were really struggling last year.
For Deshaun Watson?
Oh, man. Yeah, I guess for Watson or Shadur. Yeah, I don't know. But bro, for Quinshawn, right? For Quinshawn.
Yeah, for Quinshawn, he's gonna eat. I'm happy for Quinshawn.
All right, let's keep it going.
He's gonna eat.
Pittsburgh Steelers. So we do have some relevant names here. We brought up Michael Pittman earlier as it related to kind of the DJ Moore trade acquisition. I'm of the feeling that Michael Pittman kind of walks into a similar fantasy production scenario here, where he's just that short to intermediate blanket. It's obviously going to depend a lot on who the quarterback ends up being for this team. I would, without knowing that information, probably feel better than like 50% chance that he outproduces DK Metcalf next year. What do you think about that?
I am fairly confident in that as well, just because of that. I feel like you said, the roles they would play in that offense. I think it'll open things up a little bit more for DK. Like, he'll get those deep shots a little bit more often.
I think they complement each other pretty well.
Absolutely. Like, I think it'll be a good duo, but I think Michael Pittman's going to end up being the more targeted one out of the two, just based on the roles that they're going to be playing.
Yeah, I agree with that. But in terms of what it means for his actual fantasy outcome, I don't see it being much different than the role he was already playing with the Colts. Rico Dowdle, another one that's like a little disappointing. Like, I like Rico, but I also like Jalen Warren.
Mm-hmm.
And crazy to say that we would miss Arthur Smith, but for this specific scenario, with Arthur Smith gone, like, the running back touch share for the team is just going to go down. Like, for sure, it can't, like, he's the guy that gives the ball to the running backs.
Yeah.
Rico Dowdle specifically, like, made a note as he was entering free agency that one of his priorities was playing time. So I have a hard time believing that he's going to get anything less than like a 50-50 split with Jalen Warren. I just think they kind of cannibalize each other, and it's not fun for either of them.
Yeah, they both are not really, like, they're similar style of play, sort of, but like they both serve like the same roles. They can both kind of do the same stuff in terms of what they can get done out there. Yeah. I think this is more of a well, not even more of a, but sorry to everybody who drafted Caleb Johnson, bro, because he is buried.
We told you not to.
He's getting buried. Yeah, absolutely buried at this point.
That's very true. As it relates to the situation that Rico is leaving in Carolina, does this give you any hope for kind of the resurgence of Jonathan Brooks?
Yeah, I think that they may still be trying to get him out there. Either that, or they're looking at somebody in the draft to go and get, maybe. But just based on the talent level, I think Jonathan Brooks may actually get an opportunity. We've been waiting for it for the last, 2 years?
Yeah, yeah. The way that I read into it is that he had that ACL reconstruction surgery coming out of college, and then he retore it. I think it was just like a failed. Like, I don't think he was ever fully healed. I don't.
Yeah,
think
it was more of a setback than a.
Yeah. And so now it seems like he has truly fully recovered. To me, it's not two separate ACL tear injuries. It was kind of all part of the same thing. It just happened to drastically extend the timeline. So I do hope for him that he gets an opportunity there. And yeah, I think he could do pretty well with it, actually.
I was about to say, I remember seeing that he's definitely trending upward. I think I saw an article that was earlier this month.
Yeah, no, I've been seeing positive stuff out of Carolina as well. But let's keep it going. We'll go to the AFC South. David Montgomery being the top of the list here, acquired from the Detroit Lions. I'm curious what you think this means for David Montgomery specifically, and also how much it kind of downgrades Woody Marks.
I think that this will land David Montgomery into a spot where he can be the starter like he's been wanting to be for a little bit, a starter again. But also with Woody Marks there, I think he just takes more of that pass catching role where he's just sort of a Jahmyr Gibbs super duper light from like his rookie season.
the lightest it could possibly be.
You know what I'm saying? But in terms of roles, I think it's going to be that sort of 1-2 where he'll be the passing downs guy. But David Montgomery can still do that as well if they need him to. So.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable takeaway. Do you think that David Montgomery improves as a fantasy asset? Like, obviously he probably gets to walk into the number one role, which he did not have in Detroit, but also he was playing for Detroit, like one of the better offenses in the league with a ton of scoring opportunities. How does this kind of settle for D-Mont?
It depends if this is the early season Texans or towards the end of the season Texans
That's
that we
fair.
see. Because if it's early season Texans, I don't want any parts of David Montgomery. But if we get towards where they were starting to pick things up and CJ Stroud was getting his feet back under him again, I'd be cool with that. I like David Montgomery in that spot, and I think he'll do well.
Yeah, and now that I'm looking at it, David Montgomery was actually not that useful last year. 9.1 half PPR points per game is the RB34. I could see him outproducing that in this role for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He was just getting phased out more and more last year, and he knew too. That's why he got out of there.
That's very true. The team brings back Dalton Schultz. I don't know that we need to really add much there. Do you feel that necessary?
He's there.
He's there. Trent Brown comes back. They do add Braden Smith, another offensive tackle. So hopefully that means good things for the offensive line. But I think that's all I have for the Texans. We can go to the Colts. I want to talk about Pierce first, I think. Alec Pierce does rejoin the team on a huge contract, 4-year, $114 million value. Tell me whether you disagree. I think it's probably good to see him back on the Colts where we know they kind of got the best out of him, where he grew and turned into this fantasy relevant asset after being pretty irrelevant for the beginning of his career. And with Michael Pittman gone, there were some interesting splits that I saw for him specifically with Pittman off the field, where his targets per out run and yards per out run both jumped dramatically. But the same could be said for Josh Downs with Pittman off the field. So I think both of them kind of have the arrow pointing up.
I think so. I think Alec Pierce won he had was that his first 1,000-yard season last year?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think, like you said, he's trending upward for sure. As you see up top, they brought back Daniel Jones. So, infrastructure-wise, things should stay pretty similar. And just the role that they use him in, it's not like they let Michael Pittman go and they're like, hey, Alec Pierce, we're giving you this money. You got to be our short to intermediate guy now. Like you said, They have a Josh Downs where they can keep him and move him to that role and let Alec Pierce still, thrive where he's at.
Yeah. I'm also curious to see if Tyler Warren's role expands because, he could kind of fit into that Michael Pittman-esque territory. I also this is still Daniel Jones we're talking about coming off of an Achilles injury now. Like he could be what we saw from him while he was healthy last year, and this offense could be running hot. Or he could be Daniel Jones and things could fall off the rails. I still don't know whether I can trust this. What do you think?
I will never in my life trust Indiana Jones, but
yeah, exactly.
I will have fun the weeks that he does do well. That's all I can really say on the situation. It's tough to trust Daniel Jones, especially coming off an Achilles. And we've seen how that can kind of change play styles and
mobility is a big part of his game.
Do you give your quarterback who just tore an Achilles touches on the goal line like they were doing last year? I don't think so. I think that disappears. So, if goal line touches disappear, that was a big part of his points last year. I will say.
So, if we're talking just him specifically for fantasy, yes, definitely a downgrade. That could help Jonathan Taylor, but also if he's just bad, if he's just worse, then it hurts everybody.
Everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. So just if you guys are playing best ball or whatever the case is, just bake that possibility in when thinking about all these players that things could go south quickly.
Daniel Jones keeps getting these contracts, man.
Is
he the new Brock Osweiler
or Kirk Cousins?
Yeah,
the King.
Yeah,
potentially
King Kirk.
I think we can come back to Jacksonville when we talk about another situation. We'll get to that backfield. But let's go to Tennessee. Wan'Dale Robinson, probably the biggest addition. And that's funny. He's very small. That's not a big addition. I don't know that this changes much for him or for the Titans. He's not a needle mover for this offense, in my opinion. It doesn't improve Cam Ward's situation. I don't think. And he's just going to be another kind of PPR scam like he was in New York.
Yeah, I don't know what the direction is for this team right now because I feel like Wan'Dale Robinson and Chimere Dike, they kind of serve very similar roles in terms of being wide receivers for the team. Chimere Dike was really starting to pick things up too as a receiver as the season went along.
Yeah.
But I guess you do bring in a Wan'Dale because he's already, proven he can do it. So
DK, I feel like he's got more field stretching capabilities. And they asked him to do so much. He was on the field a ton.
I think he can honestly do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So I think it doesn't really hurt him. I think it just changes his role within that offense. We'll see a different Chimere DK, or at least a more focused Chimere DK next year.
We're talking about Wan'Dales and Chimeres, bro. Like, this
That's
offense is bad.
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I don't.
Yeah.
And then Calvin Ridley is still somewhere in all that.
That's
what I'm
honestly
saying.
maybe worse.
I don't know what this group is at this point. It's just a bunch of guys that all kind of can do it a lot, but also not at the same time.
Can do it all at like a C level at best.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cordell Volson. Sorry.
I was just going to say it's just another person that Cam Ward can throw the ball to. So it does open things up like that, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. This is a great episode so far. I'm really loving it.
Sure.
They bring in Cordell Volson and Austin Schlottman. I'm not that deep into like the trenches. I don't know who these guys are necessarily, but maybe that means improvement for their offensive line. What do you think?
I don't know anything about Austin Schlottman. I think he's coming from the Giants possibly, but Cordell Volson is for sure coming from the Bengals. And if that's the case, I'm not very confident that makes anything better on that side of the line.
All right. Maybe we should move on.
Yeah.
Let's go to the AFC West. Broncos do re-sign J.K. Dobbins. This is kind of interesting to me, right? Like J.K. Dobbins was one of the most efficient running backs in the NFL, just like across the board last year. He didn't get a ton of opportunity because they also had R.J. Harvey and for some reason wanted to include all these different running backs. And he's now coming off of was it a Jones fracture or a Liz Frank? Some significant foot
Something
injury.
in the foot, yeah.
Not very encouraging for a running back, especially now that he's starting to get older. Even if he does come back fully healthy, it's hard for me to like want to make the J.K. Dobbins bet the same way that I did last year with RJ Harvey coming into year 2. Not that he even really impressed me that much, but like there's just no way that they reduce what's on his plate. Like either it's the same and J.K. Dobbins is still just kind of fine, or he grows in his role and then Dobbins is almost useless.
Yeah, I think those are probably the two most likely outcomes. It's either they start to hand the keys more to RJ Harvey and then he picks up more and J.K. Dobbins is more of a complimentary running back in that group, or it's just the committeeest committee we've ever seen in Denver. And I think that's probably the more likely option out of the two because RJ Harvey, like you said, was not very impressive last year at all.
Yeah.
Especially in the games he got full opportunity. It's just he didn't really do much with it.
He had some fun breakaway runs, but like in terms of his actual down-to-down consistency, it just wasn't there. I do think that J.K. Dobbins being re-signed is probably the best case scenario for Harvey. If there's still his truthers out there looking for him to improve, like it's not some big splash, big money signing that would prevent RJ Harvey's growth into a role. This is the same as last year where we think throughout the season, Harvey could, expand his potential.
Yeah, so we're just back on that kind of train of thought, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Maybe the biggest news, Kenneth Walker, the Super Bowl MVP, goes to the Chiefs. We've been talking this whole offseason about who the running back that was going to go to the Chiefs would be. I'm very curious if you have a rant coming for us here.
This situation right here, it reminds me of the, you ever seen that meme? It's Yu-Gi-Oh, but it's like, it was supposed to be me, not him. I feel like that's how Breece Hall felt when he saw that this happen right here.
Yeah.
Because, again, this makes the team better. Obviously, Isaiah Pacheco's out of there. Kenneth Walker's there. Now, I am slightly more okay with Eric Bieniemy being the offensive coordinator here. I am slightly more okay with it. Because Kenneth Walker, he's not a world-breaking running back. He's a good to great running back, I will say. Super Bowl MVP, not taking nothing away from him. Especially that playoff run, he was great. If he carries that in the next season, I'm afraid of the Chiefs for sure. But this feels better than them getting Jeremiah Love right here.
For anybody that hasn't followed this saga of Will with the Chiefs, them bringing in Eric Bieniemy as opposed to Matt Nagy to kind of be the running back guru. There were thoughts that Jeremiah Love could get drafted by the team, and then that was going to piss Will off because then, of course, their running back or their run game is going to be better because they have Jeremiah Love, not because of Eric Bieniemy. I thought that this might elicit a similar response, but I'm glad to hear that it's a little bit more reasonable from you.
It makes me calm down a little bit, but I'm still gonna be pissed off when people say it. I'm still gonna be really pissed off.
That's fair. But let's actually talk about the fantasy implications here for Kenneth Walker and for the rest of the Chiefs. I think anything other than saying like this is so much fun, this is awesome, is probably overthinking it. I think it's a great outcome for Kenneth Walker and the Chiefs offense as a whole. This is something that the Chiefs have been missing for the last 3 years. Davis Maddock brought up a good stat that I think, I don't know if it's explosive plays or if it's just general efficiency, but one of them, the Chiefs have been literally dead last in the league for 3 straight years. And so Kenneth Walker brings that explosive element. We'll see if Kareem Hunt gets re-signed. He's not under contract currently. I know that this is disgusting to say, but he was actually really good last year, especially when it came to like the goal line. He was the best at translating, inside the 5-yard line touches into touchdowns of anybody in the league, I think. And again, I know that that's gross, and I hope that the money that they just gave to Kenneth Walker is enough to make him the guy everywhere. But it's possible if they bring back Hunt that like we could have a similar kind of Zach Charbonnet situation at the goal line.
That's gonna piss me off.
Yeah. I'm not predicting it. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen. I hope that that's not true. In terms of other positives, this is obviously a good offense, or at least I guess maybe that's in question after last year. I expect this to be a pretty good offense. This team tends to pass a lot on early downs, which I think is great for Kenneth Walker, because even if they don't bring in somebody, but they don't give Kenneth Walker the kind of third down, long down and distance role, he can still accumulate receptions in those early downs instead of just being that kind of 2-minute drill guy or whatever the case may be there. So I think that this significantly elevates his fantasy outcomes. I think he probably settles in like definitely in the second round of fantasy drafts, and potentially, depending on how high people want to push him, like maybe towards that 1-2 turn.
Bro, people were drafting Clyde Edwards-Helaire back in the day in like the first and second. Kenneth Walker's probably going to be in the first round. Let's not kid ourselves.
I'm giving too much credit to the fantasy community that we've grown since then. But
Nah, I don't think so, brother. I think. Hold on. First, you guys subscribe for this season, bro. Chiefs fans, buckle the fuck up, because this is gonna be a goddamn season. I swear.
It's gonna be a movie.
I swear.
That's funny. All right. And then, okay, good things for Kenneth Walker, good things for the offense as a whole, because they're going to be more explosive on the ground. Teams are going to have to respect their run game. They're not going to be able to have light boxes all the time, which hopefully opens things up for the pass game. You agree with that?
Absolutely. I think they're not going to be predictable like they've been for the last 3 years.
I certainly hope so, especially with Matt Nagy out of there. I don't know how much he was actually involved in play calling, because I know that's Andy Reid's role, but we just want him out of the building. So that's good.
Yeah, Matt Nagy's never a positive, I feel like.
No. Travis Kelce comes back on a 1-year deal. Was actually not that bad. Like people might think he's washed. Maybe he is, but like I don't think he was as bad as people kind of thought he was last year. His production went down more so due to like his target role, but like his actual efficiency individually in a vacuum wasn't that bad. Do we want to get into any of the Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy stuff, or do we leave that for another video?
I mean, we could talk about it for a second. Like Rashee Rice, yeah. I don't exactly know what's happening with his situation, if there's been any types of updates, or if the NFL is even tracking it at the moment. Like I'm sure they're aware of it. I'm sure they're aware of it, but I haven't heard any updates since the first one, and it's not a great update.
Yeah. So what's the latest? Accused of domestic violence.
Yeah. That's the latest I had heard, is that he was accused of domestic violence, and there were charges possibly being pressed, but I haven't heard anything since, or if there were actually charges. And
that's on top of his already not so great track record, already been suspended by the NFL once. So, if he's a repeat offender, that could be a much longer suspension. I don't know that, that's a guarantee, but it's definitely something that I'm kind of baking in when talking about the rest of this offense as we head into 2026. I think that Xavier Worthy's role could expand. We've talked plenty about Xavier Worthy on this channel as well, where he's not a wide receiver one, like a carry the offense type guy, but situationally, when given the runway, like I think of him similarly to kind of like a Jameson Williams, where in the perfect circumstances, he can be awesome. But if anything is wrong about that, like, he's not going to be that great. And this could be that scenario. This could be that window where he actually ends up being pretty fantasy relevant.
And then just to give a full update, I looked it up. It's a civil lawsuit at the point that he's, going through. So it's not criminal. Okay. As far as it doesn't get in the criminal, I don't think the NFL really cares. But I don't know how they're going to treat the situation. Yeah,
fair enough. All right. Anything you want to add before we move on?
Nah, I think we're good. We'll be back, Chiefs. Trust.
Oh, we'll be back. Let's stay in the division, but we go to the Raiders. Not super exciting, but Jalen Nailor, I think, is at least worth talking about. I thought he played pretty well for the Vikings when he was the wide receiver 2, when we were waiting for Jordan Addison to come back. And even in his, pretty small role as the wide receiver 3, I thought he showed flashes. The runway is open for pass catchers in Vegas. It's really, there's very little competition. So I'm curious if he kind of gets to spread his wings a little bit.
So I guess the one thing I can say about Jalen Nailor, one, he's Nine's favorite target. He just lost that. So big downgrade for Nine over there in Minnesota. But in terms of him being over here, we got to wait to see who it is they end up drafting. It's probably going to be Francisco Mendoza. Did I say Fernando Mendoza? Why do I always say Francisco? I always say that. God damn. Fernando Mendoza. But in terms of that, I think that's a good sign that Jalen Nailor was able to play well with J.J. McCarthy, which means he could be at least a little rookie-proof, nice safety blanket, someone who's able to get on par with the young guys quick.
Yeah.
But in terms of himself, there's a lot of opportunity out there. I don't know who's going to get it, to be honest with
Bowers.
You. Well, yeah, obviously Brock Bowers is going to be their wide receiver 1. He's been that for the last 2 years. But in terms of like who that number 2 guy is going to be, you got Jalen Nailor there. I feel like Deontay Thornton is still a guy who could end up being somebody at some point.
Trey Tucker is probably their locked and loaded wide receiver 1, but like that's far from a guarantee also.
Yeah, it's a lot of guys I feel like we're going to be fighting for that number 1 spot. It's not really a guarantee on who's who.
Yeah.
Except for Brock Bowers. He's Brock Bowers.
That's going to be so much fun. I can't wait. Tyler Linderbaum does get signed, even though that's kind of the only addition they've made to the offensive line so far. You love to see a step in the right direction. We talked about that with Geno Smith and how terrible that O-line was last year. Best center on the market for sure. Glad to see him in silver and black.
Oh, yeah. Good to know they're actually looking at the offensive line, too. They also know it's a problem. So
yeah,
hopefully they make more moves as well and bring some more guys in, or, bring somebody in the draft that they can develop.
Yeah, maybe not fantasy relevant, but I am curious about this, the rescinding of this trade and what that means for their ability to keep all of these free agents that they just signed under contract, because now they have Max Crosby on the books again. It's a real tough situation.
And they can't just trade him again because he just failed a physical, right?
Well, that's part of, like, the league is saying that the Ravens did some shady stuff. Of course, he wasn't going to pass a physical based on like his recovery timeline. Like, he was never going to pass a physical. That was right. Like, the Ravens should have done their due diligence on his injury prior to agreeing to that deal. I don't know what the specifics are of how it actually went down, but I don't know that it prohibits them from trading him. But I do think that they're certainly not getting 2 first-round picks again.
Yeah, that price is coming down.
Yeah,
because teams know they got to get rid of them now if they want to keep all these guys. They're otherwise not going to be able to afford everyone, right?
Yeah, seems like it. Let's keep it going. Alec Ingold, maybe not fantasy relevant for him specifically, but I do think it's fun for what this means for the level of autonomy that Mike McDaniel has within the Los Angeles Chargers organization and what this offense is going to look like. Bringing in his blocker that he's had kind of throughout his career, this is going to be a really fun run game. And, even with Charlie Kohler being the blocking tight end, like both of these guys kind of indicate that for me.
Absolutely. I think that one, like you said, it just shows how much trust they've really put into Mike McDaniel to just go and get his guys and put his offense together. But just having that guy who's this sure blocker like Alec Ingold has been for the last couple of years, paired up with Amari and Hampton, I think that's going to be a good time. Really good time.
Absolutely. I don't know if it's changed since, but a couple days ago, I saw somebody tweet that the over-under for Amari and Hampton's rushing yards this season is like basically at 1,000 yards, like 999.5. Bro, hit the over.
Smash it now.
Like the under is typically a good bet on player props because he could get injured or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of outs for the under to hit, but if he stays healthy, oh my goodness, he's going over that.
Yeah, bro, I'm putting my life savings on that if he stays healthy the whole season. I think literally the only way that doesn't hit is, like you said, if he gets injured and he's just out for a major portion.
For sure. They do also make some offensive line additions. Trevor Penning is coming back to the team, so that's not necessarily an addition, but Cole Strange and Tyler Biadasz coming from the Commanders. I think Biadasz is a relatively significant one. I don't know about Cole Strange, but considering how beat up this Chargers offensive line was last year and how poorly they performed, it's good to see that they're addressing it.
Absolutely. I would even throw Charlie Kohler into that little mix too, just because he's a blocking tight end. He's also going to help bolster that line a lot.
Like, for real, all of these guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so that'll do it for the AFC West. We can move on to the NFC. Who do we have here? I think the Giants are the first team that I want to talk about. Pickens has had his moment. Patrick Ricard, I don't know how much that matters to me. It's just kind of a John Harbaugh, like, safety blanket guy that he needs to have with him at all times. Isaiah Likely, probably the most fantasy relevant of definitely of the two. What do you think about the Likely signing?
I hate that. I like it. But I think it was a good move. Obviously, the Giants, they lost Bellinger, so they didn't really have a number one guy to go to.
Theo Johnson.
Oh, Theo Johnson. Oh, yeah, that's right. Forgot about him. Shit.
Who, honestly, still think is the number one. I'm not super high on Likely.
Really?
I mean, just purely as a receiver, yeah, but
being able to do both and stay on the field, yeah, that's fair. I did forget all about Theo Johnson. My bad, guys.
No, you're good, bro. Yeah, I mean, I think Likely can have a role. I think they could play some 2 tight end sets. And for what it's worth, like, Jackson Dart showed the willingness to kind of just throw those jump balls to big athletic guys, and we've seen Likely do that in Baltimore. So maybe in the red zone he could factor in. I just don't see a consistent fantasy relevant role from him.
I think it depends too on if they bring somebody else in at receiver as well. Because right now, Malik Neighbors still coming off a major knee injury, and
Wan'Dale gone.
Yeah, so it's just Darius Slayton at the moment.
True. Yeah, honestly, Theo and Likely might be the top 2 targets right now.
You know what I'm saying? So it's somebody, they're going to get some burn out of them at least early on for sure.
If they, I can't say waste because Jeremiah Love is so good, but like if they take Jeremiah Love at 5 over a Carnell Tate or a wide receiver, that would just be ridiculous to me.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
So fingers crossed that they bring in a receiver, I guess just for their organization. I don't know how exciting that would be for any of the top 3 receivers to land in New York. But besides the point of the video, I don't know that there's really anything to add from any of the rest of the NFC East. You good to...
Yeah, keep moving, man. I don't want to talk about Washington.
Sorry.
Fucking Traylon Burks. Keep going.
But the Bears also don't have too much of notes, but I thought it was interesting, the Lions connection there between the head coach and Khalif Raymond. Just could be that nice kind of blocking piece and potentially impacts anybody that was hoping for big things from Ja'Day Walker as the wide receiver 3 for the Bears. They could also still draft somebody, so you're not out of the woods yet, but not that relevant for that many people.
Yeah, definitely agree.
Garrett Bradbury, they immediately replace the center need after, was it Drew Dahlman retired?
Yeah, retired. Yep.
Yeah. So they fill that position pretty quickly. I don't know that there's much more to add on the Bears. You have anything?
No, I mean, we talked about the receiving group earlier with the move for DJ Moore, so I think we're good on the Bears group. Cool.
We can go to the Lions. Isaiah Pacheco comes and fills in the role left by David Montgomery in that trade. 1-year deal, very little money. I think this is, what's up?
It's Jameer season.
Yeah, dude. That's what I was going to say is I think this is good for both Pacheco and for Gibbs. Pacheco leaves the Chiefs, comes to the Lions, who have proven to be a great run game. He's not going to be David Montgomery because he's not as good as David Montgomery, but if he can be 75% of that, that's an improvement for him in terms of fantasy production. And if he's the 2, Gibbs is gonna eat, bro.
Yes.
Like it's gonna be wild. And the crazy thing is we're gonna get to the Falcons backfield. But Bijan and Gibbs are set to just lap the field this year.
Oh my God. I'm so looking back on that draft, man. I should have did more.
Yeah. So I'm very excited for this. If it's not clear, the reason we say that, Isaiah Pacheco is a downgrade from David Montgomery, nearly a 0 in terms of receiving profile, not going to eat into Gibbs. And we saw Gibbs' role expand even with David Montgomery there last year. Wheels up.
Absolutely.
They also make improvements to the offensive line. With all 3 of these additions, we'll see how much impact that has. But, Detroit has had one of the best blocking offensive lines, not last year, but like the previous 2 or 3 years, they had been among the league's best. We've seen that kind of fall off. So hopefully this gets them back towards the top of the league.
Yeah. And if they get that and have a free Jahmyr Gibbs, it gets pretty scary pretty quick.
Very, very. And I don't think the Packers or the Vikings have anything of note. So let's just jump right into those Falcons I was talking about, man. We'll talk about Tua later because I want to make this transition. We see Tyler Allgeier leave and go to the Cardinals. What does this mean for Bijan?
It just opens up everything for him right there. That was the last roadblock, I think, because the coaches had kind of referred to Tyler Allgeier as the 1B to Bijan's 1A, which I never really understood myself. But without that in the way at all now, it's just wheels up for Bijan. Absolutely. He's doing everything on the field now. He's catching passes. He's running out the backfield. He is the number 1 running back for this offense, and I think in fantasy too, officially.
Yeah, he's pretty firmly the RB1.
It's probably between him and Jahmyr. Yeah, I was about to say it's going to be between those two. That's going to be the 1 and 2.
100%. Yeah. We had this conversation last year, but it's even further cemented this year that those guys are at the top of the ladder. I think the only real thing, Bijan was getting a ton of receptions, especially by the end of the year last year. He was getting a ton of work. The biggest roadblock that Tyler Allgeier proved to be was at the goal line. Took a lot of goal line carries and scored a lot of touchdowns. If Bijan is the only guy getting those touches, or at least 75% of them instead of 50%, he could truly have like a prime CMC type season.
Absolutely. And then we say this, and then they're going to go draft a fucking Jonah Coleman or something.
That would really suck. Okay, now we can talk about Tua, which I have less confidence in terms of like exactly how that's going to play out. I'm curious your thoughts as well, but like based on the Penix injury, I think it's a decent bet that Tua starts the season. Yeah?
Yeah, I would say.
And then I guess it's possible and maybe even likely that if Tua plays well, he just continues to start. The likelihood that he plays well, maybe not that high. So I fully expect Penix to play this year. The thing, one, we have to decipher how much we think either of them are going to play and how significant of a difference that's going to be for the rest of the offense in terms of like how we want to draft the rest of these guys. I think Tua would be great for Bijan, the same way he was great for Etienne in terms of checkdowns and receptions. And I think that Penix is great for London. We've seen their splits together look fantastic. I'm curious if you have any opinions in that area.
I hate Tua, man, but this one, he's going to end up playing, and we've seen him also play pretty efficiently in his career at times. Mm-hmm. I don't know if this offense is going to be able to do that with Tua, though, because he was working with some guys like Mike McDaniel was no ordinary offensive coordinator. So when you take Tua and you throw him into a different situation with probably a less talented offensive coordinator, I don't know exactly what that equals, especially a Tua at this point in his career.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So I think he's a good Band-Aid, but I don't even know if he's a guy that one, he'd have to last the whole season, which I don't really see that really, being too likely. But at the same time, he would also have to just play at a high level, and I don't know if he's really capable of doing that anymore either.
I think you could say the same things about Penix too, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just a tough situation. And I don't think either of them are particularly good fits schematically or play style wise for the Stefanski scheme.
No, not at all. We already talked about how Michael Penix is really bad for his fit, just based off how he runs like play action stuff like that.
His inability to do so well,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I don't
Yeah.
think Tua's too different in that aspect either. You got two left-handed quarterbacks, you don't have to change too much when you go back and forth.
Yeah, so honestly, I'm not sure like how much of a fall off there would be from one to the other, or if there is any. It's honestly just like,
It would just change the offense.
yeah, slightly. I'm curious because we this is something we also talked about in that same video you're referencing, where Kyle Pitts benefits a ton when they get into play action. They just didn't do it very frequently with Penix. I think they ran a good amount of play action with Tua, so maybe he would also be the beneficiary there if Tua were the starter.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to say, but
Well,
we're just trying to decipher things.
but they're definitely going to want to get their usage out of Kyle Pitts too with that franchise tag on him.
That's
So
very true.
yeah, they're
That's very
definitely
true.
he's going to get his burn.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Not a ton of note from the Panthers. Luke Fortner, center, comes in. Maybe that improves some things. I don't know. Saints. Travis Etienne signs a big deal, 4-year deal, $52 million. The big domino that has yet to drop is what happens with Alvin Kamara. Curious if you have any thoughts or leanings in that direction, and then based on that, what it means for Etienne.
I mean, I kind of hope they don't just kind of ship him out or whatever, but I mean, he still got a little bit of juice left in the tank. He doesn't have a lot left, but he was still playing pretty well when it came to being a passing downs running back.
I think he was accumulating volume, and that buoyed him for fantasy. I
Yeah,
don't know that he's been that great in real life.
that's fair. It's tough to just see a pass under the guard like this, man, because we've seen
Love
Alvin
him, dude.
Kamara with this team his whole career.
Yeah,
But obviously at this point, Travis Etienne is the much better running back,
yeah.
and he can do pretty much everything. Not even pretty much. He can do everything that Alvin Kamara can in terms of running the ball in between the tackles, being explosive. Currently,
This form of yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
not
Yeah,
the Alvin Kamara of old,
right.
but this Travis Etienne versus this Alvin Kamara, I would very much take Travis Etienne.
100%. Yeah, I completely agree. The rumblings I've heard is that it's more likely than not that Kamara gets moved. And obviously that would open the runway for Etienne. I think if that were to be the case, I'm going to forget who it was. I think it might have been Jacob Sanderson. Somebody made a comparison that Travis Etienne's role could look very similar to Josh Jacobs' role in Green Bay. Where like they're not super high efficiency necessarily, but the volume is just crazy and he does literally everything. So I think it could be a very fantasy viable role for Etienne. Maybe not better than what he would have had in Jacksonville, just because Liam Cohen is like a run game guru. He's incredible. But I really like Kellen Moore. I love the pace that he plays with in this offense. And so he's just going to run a lot of plays. Travis Etienne is going to touch the ball a lot. So I'm kind of excited for this landing spot, actually, assuming Kamara moves.
Absolutely. And that stands to what do you get for an Alvin Kamara in the trade?
I don't know, man. So I don't have an answer to that question. But another thing that actually Jacob Sanderson said recently, I would love. I hate to say this because we just talked about how much we love Alvin Kamara, the player, but like, I would love for Alvin Kamara to go to one of these like sort of uncertain situations. Like if he were to go to Jacksonville and depress the price of Tootin, great. I can get Tootin at a value. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it's not really going to affect much in my opinion.
No, I feel that. I definitely feel that.
Okay. Anything else to add for the Saints before we move on?
Nah, I think we're good on that one.
Okay. Kenny Gainwell goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is an interesting one. I'm having trouble kind of deciphering exactly what it means for that backfield. My initial leanings is that for Gainwell specifically, I don't love it. He's coming from the Steelers and that Arthur Smith offense that we talked about earlier in the video, where the running back usage was just through the roof. And so he was probably in the best scenario he could have been in, unless he was able to find somewhere with that usage and be the true RB1. But he comes in here probably more likely to just be the pass catching guy. Bucky's still there. It's not impossible. Guys like Najee Harris, Brian Robinson, Nick Chubb are still on the market. Like they could bring in a goal line guy too and really make this gross. If they don't, I think that this actually could be decent for Bucky. Like if he gets the goal line touches and the early down stuff, similar to what we talked about with the Chiefs, where if they pass on early downs, he can still get that receptions share for Bucky, even if he's not the third down guy. I don't know. What are your takes? Do you agree, disagree with any of that?
I don't disagree. Or do I? Whoa, that's a double negative. What did I even just say just now?
I
I
don't
agree.
disagree.
I agree.
Okay, there you
Yeah,
go.
there we go. I think last year that injury probably spooked them a little bit with Bucky because we literally didn't get updates throughout the season as to when he was ever going to come back. It was just hey, he might. We don't know.
Yeah.
So, and that kind of left the team in not a bad spot because why am I forgetting his name? The Rachaad White. Is that his name?
Yep.
Rachaad White isn't a terrible running back. He was able to fill in pieces, but there were also games where you could tell that run game was just non-existent. Yeah. So bringing in a Kenneth Gainwell, who is coming off a career year, who did do well with the opportunities he got, I think it at least shores things up. If Bucky can't play, they have another guy who can still carry the torch.
Yeah. And honestly, they're fairly similar stylistically.
Yeah, and size-wise as well.
Yeah, that's fair. So probably not the best fantasy situation for anybody involved, but there's possibility for some fantasy viability there. You brought up Rachaad White. Just to make it clear, he is no longer with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I put him in a similar category to what we just talked about with Kamara, where if he lands with somebody that's exciting, that seems to have a clear runway, that's great because then we get the value on that other running back. Not a Rachaad White believer.
No.
Which I know you echo those sentiments. We've talked about that for years.
You could probably go back on this channel and probably find a couple videos of me shitting on Rachaad White at some point.
100%. Cade Otton resigns. Still Cade Otton. Same thing.
Yeah, same.
Same. All right, NFC West, and I think this closes it out for us. Only a couple teams to talk about here. Arizona Cardinals signed Gardner Minshew and bring back Jacoby Brissett, and say that Jacoby Brissett is going to be the starter at least to begin the season. I think Brissett being the starter is good for everybody involved. It's great for Trey McBride, pretty good for Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson. We'll talk about Allgeier and the running backs, but in terms of pass catchers, how do you feel?
No, I feel like it's a big upgrade for everybody. I'm just glad Kyler's out of there.
I don't know that we can say upgrade. I guess unless the alternative was Kyler starting for them.
If the alternative was Kyler Murray at quarterback, it's an upgrade.
That's fair.
But in terms of for the pass catchers themselves, it's a better situation for them because the stuff can kind of get distributed a little bit better. Tyler Allgeier, as a player, he kind of just muddies the situation for the running back room. We talked about it. Again, this is another one we talked about off camera. But with Tyler Allgeier, out of the three running backs they have back there, him and James Conner are probably the ones I would trust the most, with Trey Benson being on the outside of that. But I also don't know how James Conner is going to return from. It was an ankle injury that kept him out last year, right?
I believe so. And part of what led them to bringing him back was a significant pay cut. We haven't actually gotten the numbers on that yet, but once we find out what that is, that could actually influence some things a little bit more. I fully expect, based on this deal, that Tyler Allgeier is going to be the 1A at least. But if James Conner's money got cut dramatically, then Tyler Allgeier is the guy.
Absolutely. And then Kendrick Bourne is cool out there too. He's a nice complementary piece to the other two guys.
Sure. But for Allgeier, I do want to spend just a little bit more time. Upgrade in the sense that he's no longer the backup. But being the, James Conner's still going to be involved in some capacity. He's not going to be the clear-cut 3-down workhorse. He doesn't really have that in his arsenal anyway. For a team that could be the worst in the league and is going to be playing from behind a ton, a guy that doesn't catch a lot of passes, not that exciting to me for fantasy, honestly.
Yeah, that is true. I think the most exciting thing is that he possibly get those goal line touches. That's probably it.
Yeah, I like that. And then one last thing to touch on with the quarterback situation, just because Jacoby Brissett got named the starter doesn't mean I think the Cardinals, obviously other than the Raiders with Fernando Mendoza, are the most likely to add a significant rookie, whether that be Ty Simpson or whoever. I think it's well within the range of outcomes that it's a lost season, they're playing poorly, and halfway through the year, they just bring in the rookie. And so that's something that we need to bake in with the Trey McBrides and Marvin Harrison Jr.'s and everybody, because as soon as that rookie comes in, things go south.
Yeah, things are going to change dramatically.
Yeah. All right. I don't think there's much to say about the Rams. Tyler Higbee comes back. defensive additions. Yeah, I think the last thing to talk about here is Mike Evans, which I'm actually pretty excited about, man. I know he's old. I know that he had a really down year last year, but the underlying metrics for him I thought were more impressive before the hamstring injury. Once that happened, he wasn't very good. But I think the landing spot, I think it's a really good fit. I think what did I tell you? He's the evolved version of Juwan
Jennings. Yeah. The final form.
Yeah, that's what it was. The final form. I think he fills a role that's much needed in San Francisco. I think he's better than anything that they have currently, even at his age. And I was looking through a thread from Ryan Heath on Twitter talking about his reactions to things. He sees this really similarly to how we viewed Davante Adams in drafts last year, which I think is really high praise. Davante Adams was going, around the 2-3 turn-ish?
Yeah.
We'll see if Mike Evans gets that high, but I think that is within the range of outcomes in terms of what he could produce for this team.
So here's my thing with the Mike Evans sign. I don't hate it. I think Mike Evans still has juice in the tank. I think that he's going to play well, but I think he's going to play well when he's on the field. I think this team has slowly just become a carousel for the wide receivers where they just take turns being injured. And when Mike Evans is, when they're all healthy, like weeks 1 through 4, that shit's going to be amazing. But come week 5 or 6, when those hamstring bugs start to creep their heads out of there, I don't know what this offense is going to look like anymore. But at the very least, they've got 3 guys that are talented that they can try to keep things going if they keep continuing with these injury woes that we've seen for literally like the last 4 years straight with the 49ers.
That's very fair. The memes out there about him in the substation going all 12 rounds. We'll have to see. But I'm optimistic, I think. But yes, the injury concern is definitely high. But yeah, I think that probably rounds us out. Anything you want to add before we kind of finish this thing up?
I mean, it's just the same thing as usual, guys. These are just tools in the tool belt when it comes to drafts. Just make sure we hang around because we still have news coming from the NFL draft. Things are going to change again. We got the off season still. So stay tuned in, stay subscribed, hit the notification bell so you know when we drop all of our latest videos. So just you stay informed yourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, Will already covered it. Hit the like button also if you enjoyed the video. We appreciate you for sticking around if you did. We hope you learned something. Join us in the comments down below if you want to be part of the conversation. Let us know what you think about some of these fantasy landing spots and how they're going to affect each of their teams. But yeah, I think that'll do it. We appreciate you guys as always, and we'll catch you in the next video. Peace.